So what do they call you?
Chris.
Chris, what are you incarcerated for, sir, and how long is your sentence?
I'm in here for first-degree murder, and my sentence, I was sentenced to 52 years to life.
Where are you from out here in the streets?
I grew up in East LA, in the Borough Heights area, and as I was growing up, my grandpa tried to keep me out of the gangs as much as possible. And when I ended up getting into the gang, I started getting deeper and deeper into it, and so that caused me to move around a lot. So even though I was born and raised in East LA, I lived in Rosemead, I lived in the San Fernando Valley, I lived in West Covina, I lived in Riverside. I lived multiple places growing up in as a juvenile.
So you've definitely got an extensive look on just how bad it can get in these streets all over. It doesn't matter from the Inland Empire, doesn't matter if you're from the San Diego area, downtown Los Angeles area. It's pretty rough all over.
Yes, yeah. I discovered that there's a lot of hatred and a lot of anger towards people everywhere you go. It doesn't matter which area you're at. You see the same thing. So as I mentioned, I was born and raised in East LA, and when I was going to elementary school, I always remember that area was always gang infested. So my mom, she was from a different neighborhood, and my dad was from another neighborhood, and a lot of my family, they were from different neighborhoods scattered throughout East LA. So when I remember going to elementary school, a lot of times my mom wasn't around, and my dad was hardly ever in the picture. So I was...
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
I was raised kind of like by my grandpa and my step-grandmother, and then my aunt lived at the house. And once in a while, like my mom would come, but then sometimes she would leave. So when I would go to school, I would come back, but I would always see the guys hanging around on the corners and stuff, and how they all like were in unity. And so when I would go back, I longed for a love inside of me. I wanted the acceptance, and I wasn't getting that from my parents. And my grandpa would show me that, but at the same time, he would have to go to work, and when he would come back, he would be tired, and I get it. So I was kind of like pushed out on the street, and so I would mingle right there with the guys on the block, and little by little, they started getting into the gang, into the neighborhood. And so when they started getting in, now I was like the outcast because I wasn't involved yet. So when they would go and hang out in the neighborhood right there, I would tell them I wanted to go with them, but they told me I couldn't because I wasn't part of the neighborhood, and that was kind of exclusive right there. That was to the side. And so eventually I knew that I had to get in order to be involved in them, with them. So one day, my neighbor across the street told me that they were having a party at his older homeboy's house. And so I talked to my grandfather, and I asked him, hey, Gramps, is it cool if I go with them? And he's all like, nah, I don't want you going with them because I already know you're going to end up getting into the neighborhood. And I told him, nah, I'm not going to do all that. So I went and I followed. He finally let me go because I kept on bugging him. So I went. And that night, I was, 12, 13 years old. And we went over there, and it was in a party in West Covina. And so we were right there drinking and stuff, and girls around. I met all the homeboys, and then later on that night, I was all drunk, and it happened to be, let's just say 12, 1 o'clock in the morning, and we go back to East LA. And so we're standing right there, and everybody's still partying. And so a couple of the guys, they asked me, what's up, little homie, you ready to get into the hood? And like I said, I've been drinking, so I'm like, yeah, let's do this. And so my friend that lives across the street from my grandpa's house, he pulled me to the side, and he said, hey, man, think about what you're doing right now because your grandpa's going to get mad at both of us. He told you, he warned you. And I said, nah, my grandpa won't say nothing. So I ended up getting jumped in right there. And sure enough, I got my nose busted. And so we partied all the way till like 6 o'clock in the morning, and I told my friend, I said, you know what, let's just go back to the house, and before my grandpa wakes up. And when we went back over there, everybody happened to be awake already, and they were awake all night waiting for me to come back. And so
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
my nose was all crooked from getting jumped in. They had broke my nose. And so my uncles, they're all like, hey, what happened? And I tried to lie to them at first, but they knew. And then one of my uncles told me, don't be a ranker. He's all like, if you're going to get in and claim a neighborhood, then at least have balls enough to represent. So I told him, okay, yeah, I did get in. And he's all like, all right. And so one uncle held me down while the other one popped my nose back into place. And so that's how it all started right there. And so that was already getting towards like the ending of like the beginning of junior high school years. And so once I got in, the junior high school that I went to was called Belvedere. And so right there's another gang right there that goes at it with all the surrounding areas. And so when we used to go to that school right there, anybody from different neighborhoods, there used to always be fighting. But the guys that were from that area right there, that neighborhood right there, they would be waiting for people to catch them slipping. So when you would come out of the school, they would jump you. And so you used to have to try to sneak around. That was like an everyday thing. So my grandpa, he seen that I was going through that. So one day, my uncle, he happened to have a buck knife. And so I knew these guys were waiting right there. So I went and I got his buck knife and I took it with me to school. I put it in my backpack. And as I was going to school, I had PE class. And so one day I pulled out my gym shorts and the knife came out. And some little kid was getting his gym shorts right next to me. And he seen the knife and he looked at me and his eyes got all big. And I told him, hold on, don't say anything, because I knew I was going to get in trouble. So he went in, he's all like, no, don't worry, I won't say anything. And yeah, sure enough, he went and he told on me, bro, and I ended up getting expelled for that. So after that, my grandpa asked me, he's all like, what'd you take the knife for? What'd you take the knife to school? And I ran it down to him, and he said, you see, that's why I didn't want you to go to that party that day, and I didn't want you involved with those guys. And so he seen that I was just getting deeper into hanging around with the homeboys and stuff like that. So he told me, you know what, I can't have you here because you're going to end up dead right here. So that's when I went to go live in Rose Beach with my grandmother. And even over there, I remember my homeboys always told me, never rank the hood. It doesn't matter where you're at. You don't rank, we'll be right there for you. So I kept that in my mind. So going over there to Rosemead, first thing I ran into these dudes and they hit me up. And so they seen, even though I was a youngster, I didn't rank it. And so I seen that, I noticed that, and I paid attention like, okay, so if I don't rank it, you guys have respect for me. So I started hanging around with those guys, and that happened for a while, and I was growing up. As I was going, I went to, my grandma ended up kicking me out of there because I was getting into fights over there. I want to go back with, this is when my mom kind of got her stuff together. She wanted to go stay in the San Fernando Valley. And as she was up there, I went up there and everything was okay for a couple months. I was going to the school up there, and then I got into it with these guys from the neighborhood over there because of a couple girls that were, they were from the neighborhood over there as well. So I would talk to them, and the dudes would get mad. So I started getting into arguments and fights with them, and that's when my mom called my uncle and said, you know what, I can't handle him. You got to take him. And so I went to West Covina, and that's when I lived over there. And then when I went to West Covina, that's when it was already going into high school. So I went to the high school right there. And the high school that I went to, there was really no gangs right there, no gang members or anything like that. And so I stood out like a sore thumb. But there was a couple other guys that were kind of gang members, and so I hung up with one of them, and then he was from East LA as well. He just never really got into a neighborhood. And so eventually we would hang out all the time. We would drink, and we would get high together. Eventually he ended up getting into my neighborhood, and that became my best friend. And we started getting into other people over there in West Covina. in the area right there, and started growing right there. And yeah, that's how it started. That's how everything started getting blown up. And so everybody looked at me in that area right there because I was their older homeboy, and so I had to report to the homeboys that jumped me in and about what was going on, since I had people under me over there.
You have 60 seconds remaining.
So right there, as I was living in West Covina, my uncle, he tried to keep us as safe as he could, but at the same time, I would drink, I would get high, so my uncle would just allow us to do that right there at the house, because he said he would rather us do it there at the house than to go out anywhere else and to something happen to us. So I met a few other guys from different neighborhoods in that area right there. I remember there was this one time I met this dude. He used to work at the gas station right there where we were living at, and he became a good friend of mine as well, but he was from another neighborhood in West LA. And so there was one time where we went, I had a Tech 9 and I took it with me. He had asked me if I wanted to go and hang out with some girls, and I'm like, yeah, let's go. So we ended up going to Hollywood, and I had the gun with me, and I put it in the car, and we went over there. And so the girls that we were supposed to hang around with, they ended up flaking on us, and so we went to Tommy Burgers. We were looking for some other girls to hang around with, but we didn't find any that night. So we went to Tommy Burgers to go eat, and it just happened to be that it was in his enemy's territory right there. And so as we went inside, these two guys walk in, and I push him to the side because I see they already recognize me, and they see the bald head, and they knew I was a gang member. And so they come up, and I push my friend to the side, and then they hit me up. So I tell him where I'm from, and then so my friend ends up telling him, F you. And as soon as he said that, I hit the guy, and it just turned into like a fight right there. But one of the guys ran out, and like 10 more guys ran in, and we got jumped right there inside the Tommy Burgers in Hollywood. And that was the first time I've ever been into anything really serious like that, where I got my head cracked open. So that's where it all started right there, of the whole more of the violent mentality. Little by little, my homeboys would go over there to West Covina, and they would tell me, come on, bring up the other little homeboys, and let's go to the neighborhood and show them around. So we would take the little youngsters over there, but I could tell that they weren't really fit, or they weren't really cut out for the East LA environment. It's more of a fast pace right there. Like I said, in West Covina, it's really more of a nicer area. So when they went to East LA, they were tripping out because right there, it's like you have one liquor store and you have 3 neighborhoods that share that store right there. So if you see one of your enemies walk into the store, you're waiting for him when he comes out, and that's how people get ambushed. And there ain't no rules right there. You kidnapping, there's stabbing somebody, shooting somebody, and you're not worried about who's walking by or if anybody else is looking at you. Your main objective is to kill your enemy. And so when the guys from West Covina came with us over there, they seen that, and they kind of like, after that, they kind of backed away a little bit. But so the whole violent part kept on. It continued as wherever I went. Wherever me and my friend that I went to high school with, wherever we went, we were always together. And if you mess with one, you mess with the other. And so I ended up catching my first term in 2005 for a stolen car. I was hanging out in El Monte, and I stole this car, and I got pulled over, and that's where I did my first term at. And so I noticed that I had liked that lifestyle, and it was because it gave me some kind of acceptance. And like I said, when I was growing up, I really didn't have that acceptance. I didn't feel that acceptance, at least. My uncles, they gave me acceptance, but they were more like a tough love. I really didn't have that cariño growing up, where I felt like everything was okay. But I kind of felt a little bit like that as when I was with my homeboys, in a way. So when I went to prison, I knew that that's what they looked. My homeboys would look at. They would look to see if you could gain status, and so I wanted to make sure that my name was known out there, because I wanted my homeboys to be proud of me. And so I did I was only 16 months. I did 16 months. I got out, and I went back to the scene. I went back to with my homeboys, still partying, getting high, and it didn't stop there. I just got worse and worse, and so I was on probation. I ended up getting a violation, and so my probation officer, when I got out, he told me, okay, I'm going to send you to a rehab in Castaic. So when I moved, I went to Castaic, went to the rehab for 3 months. When I got out, I went to the San Fernando Valley to the Reseda area, and I was in a sober living right there. And even though I was trying to calm down a little bit, I still knew that I had to represent, because I couldn't rank the neighborhood. That's one thing that was embedded in me. I couldn't rank it at all. So I was clean. I was sober for like 6 months, and eventually I ran into I went with this older guy from the neighborhood right there, and he was in the rehab also, but that was his neighborhood. And he told me, he's all like, hey, it's my nephew's birthday. They're gonna rent a Hummer limo, and so we ended up going. I told him I didn't want to go because they're gonna be drinking, and that's my downfall. And he says, nah, don't worry, I got you. I'll help you out. I'll encourage you so you won't drink. And so we went. I ended up drinking, and that night.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
She's my ex-wife now, but I ended up meeting her that night and ended up spending 10 years with her. So I ended up moving with her. She told me she stayed in Ontario, and so I ended up moving over there with her, and she had 2 kids already, so I met her 2 kids and started we had our little family right there. And let's see, the only thing that didn't stop was my drug use and my alcohol use. So I ended up getting the job, but I was still drinking. I had this addiction that I couldn't kick. And I found out that she was eventually messing around with somebody else, and which caused me to even act out even more. So I was telling her, like, okay, if I find out who this is, then I'm gonna get him. And so I got deeper. I didn't know what to do at the time. So I would drink more. I would end up getting high with meth, and I just stopped caring. Everything went out the window, So I'm going to fast forward because all that time from 2009 to 2016, it was the same thing back and forth. It was just getting high, arguing, hanging out with my homeboys every so often now because I had a family. And so in 2016, I was during that time, I was like on a 3-year run, getting high every single day. And my ex-wife, she ended up kicking me out of the house. And so I went to go stay in Victorville. And when I was up there, these guys that I was hanging around with, they were breaking into storages and stuff, and they found this gun. And they found actually 2 guns, but one of
this call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
It was a 9mm, and it was all rusted. So that weekend happened to be Mother's Day weekend in 2016, and so I was going to go back down to Ontario, And my uncle, we were raised around guns. My grandpa raised us around guns, so my uncle had a gun cleaning kit. So I told the guy, I said, okay, well, look, my wife's not going to let me stay there. I'm going to go there for the weekend because I had already made arrangements for my mom that we were going to barbecue and stuff. So she went all the way up there to go pick me up. And during that time, I was hanging around with some girl up there. And so when my mom came to pick me up, I told her, look, Mom, I have this gun. And so I told that guy, I said, give me the gun. I'm going to go clean it for you, oil it, and then I'll bring it back to you when I come back up here. And he said, all right. So I told my mom, and my mom even told me, like, just leave the gun here, man. Just leave it here. And I said, nah, I already told this guy I was going to take it. I was going to clean it for him. And so she got mad at me, so I ended up putting it in the trunk. So we ended up dropping off that girl, and my mom took me back, and I went to my ex-wife's house with my kids right there. And so when I went in that night, my mom told me, don't let her see that. And I said, nah, don't worry. So I put it in my pocket. I went, my ex-wife opened the door, and when she went away, I put it up on top of the cabinet. This was on a Friday night. So Saturday, when Saturday came around, I was playing with my kids and talking to my ex-wife. Everything was good. And then is the evening. Okay, so during around 2 o'clock or so, I asked her if I could use her car to go to my uncle's house. She didn't know why. I just told her I wanted to go see him. So when she went to go get the keys, I got the gun and I put it in my pocket. And so I went to my uncle's, oiled the gun up, cleaned it up, and then that way it was ready because I knew Sunday I wasn't going to have no time because I was supposed to barbecue. So I went back to my ex-wife's house, put the gun back up on the cabinet, and I was sitting right there, and we were drinking. I was drinking with my ex-wife, and we ended up getting into an argument, throwing our past in each other's face, and so she ended up calling my mom, and my mom she came over and got all pissed off at me and told me, why are you arguing with her? Just leave her alone. So we were at odds. So she went to her room. I stayed in the living room. My mom took off with her boyfriend. And, yeah, that was it for that night. So the next morning, I was supposed to go with my ex-wife to take her to breakfast for Mother's Day. But since we weren't talking, that didn't happen. So I called my co-defendant, and I asked him, I said, hey, man, what's up? What are you doing? And he said he was just hanging out. So I asked my ex-wife if I could use her car, and so I went and I got the gun, put it in my pocket, because I wasn't going to leave the gun there because my kids were there, and I wasn't going to risk them finding it. So everywhere I went, I had that gun with me. So I went, I picked up my co-defendant, and when he got in the car, I just showed it to him, and I said, look, I just want to let you know if we get pulled over, I have this. And he's all like, all right. So he took off. We went back to the house, to my ex-wife's house, and we're sitting right there and we're drinking. And so my ex-wife comes out a bit later, and she asks me, are you going to go to the store and go get the meat for the barbecue? And I said, yeah. So when she went to go get the keys and the money again, I got the gun, put it in my pocket, and I told my co-defendant, let's go. So as we get in the car, he tells me, what's up? Let's get high. I'm like, all right. So he's from that area. So he's telling me where to go. And as we're driving down the street, he sees a truck. And he tells me, pull up next to that truck. So as I'm driving down, it's a four-lane street. So I'm driving on the right lane, and in the inner lane is that truck. So I'm trying to catch up to it, and I'm thinking, okay, maybe that's his homeboy. That's the person we're going to get dope from. So he's at a stop sign, and by the time I pull up to the stop sign, the truck's already taking off. So I had to do like a rolling stop in order to try to catch up to him. So as the truck's going down, I finally catch up to him, and he stopped.
You have 60 seconds remaining.
So as the truck pulled into the parking lot, I had to make a U-turn now because I like I said, I was on the outside lane, and I ended up passing the driveway. So I had to make a U-turn, and as I pulled into the driveway, the driver of the truck had already gotten out. And so he was parked towards on my left side, on the driver's side. I was driving, my co-defendant was a passenger. And so he looked at me, nodded his head at me, and crossed towards the passenger side, going towards the entrance of the liquor store. And my co-defendant got out and started arguing with him, which kind of caught me off guard because I didn't know what was going on. And so as they were arguing, by instinct, I grabbed the gun. And the guy that was driving in the truck, he had somebody with him, sitting passenger in the truck. And so after my co-defendant and this guy exchanged words, the guy started walking back towards the truck, and I got off and I shot him. And so that's why I'm here. And to this day, I can't tell you why I shot him. I can't tell you. There's no explanation. There's no words that I could use or words that I could say that try to justify any of my actions. And so, from that, I received 52 years to life sentence for first-degree murder. They hit me with all the special circumstances, lying in wait, premeditated, deliberate, and willful. And
this call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
How did you get caught, Christopher?
Okay, so I ended up going back. After I left, I ended up going back to my ex-wife's house, and I called my friend from when I was staying up there in Victorville. And he ended up coming down and picking me up. So when I went up there, my little brother was staying up there. It's my little brother from my dad's side, not my mom's. So he stood up there as my mom picked me up. So when I went back up there, I told my little brother, don't tell nobody that you're here with me. And so the only person that I had told was my mom. And I just told her, I said, I'm sorry, because like I said, it was Mother's Day. I was supposed to barbecue. And when she came, she finally got there, and I said, Mom, I'm sorry, I got to go. And she's all like, what do you mean you got to go? I just got here. And I said, I said, but I just did something right now, and I got to go. And she didn't understand. And so when I went, I went up there. I told my little brother, don't say nothing that you're here with me. He ended up putting it on social media. Oh, yeah, I'm right here hanging out with my brother, and the cops tracked his phone. And so this was on a Sunday. We ended up dropping off my co-defendant in the next city over, and he stood right there. The next day, which was Monday the 12th, I believe it was, the SWAT team found him by tracking his phone, I believe, and they surrounded his brother's apartment and took him in. They took him in. And then 2 days later, they went up to Victorville. And so here's the thing about that. I was so paranoid, I slept with that gun. I was staying in a tent in the backyard. The place where my friend had picked me up, it was some lady's house. And it was like in a corner right there, but it was all desert right there. It was all sand. So, like I said, I slept in a tent in the backyard. And so that morning, on Wednesday morning on the 16th, no, it was the 16th? I forgot the exact date. Wednesday morning, I came out of the tent. I looked around. I didn't see anything. I went inside, and we went to go get high, me and that girl that I was hanging around with. And there was a few other people hanging out at that house as well. And I was just tripping out because it was like a green room, an extra room right there, and this lady had curtains, but you could see out of the curtains, but you couldn't see in. And so I was checking out this guy that was hanging around at the house, and he was looking at something, and I felt it. I felt something was wrong. So as he was looking, his girlfriend was also there, but his girlfriend was staying with the lady, was hanging out with the lady of the house. So he comes inside, walks past me, goes inside, calls his girlfriend, and they both come back out. And I'm tripping out on them. I'm like, and so they go to the driveway, and then he ends up pointing. And so once he points, a van rolls up with SWAT team inside, and they jump out, and they get them on the floor, but the girl took off running. What I found out is what they were looking at was there was a guy laying down right there with binoculars, and he was scoping out the place looking for me because they pinged from where my brother's phone was at. And so when that dude's girlfriend ran towards the backyard, I ran after that way too because the van was in the front with the cops right there. So when I went to the backyard, then I seen it. They had an armored vehicle. They had an Impala with the SWAT team behind it. They had a van with SWAT team behind it. And then I noticed there was a helicopter above. So the trippy part is the lady had a dog, a pit bull, that was always barking at me, like if this dog did not like me. And so I go to the backyard, and I see I'm surrounded. So I kneel down right there, and man, my heart's racing. My palms are sweaty. I'm scared. And I'm thinking, like, man, I'm not going to go spend the rest of my life in prison. So when the cops try to come at me, I'm just going to run at them and start shooting. That's what was in my mind. And the trippy part is that dog came, and he sat next to me, and he just licked me in the face. And I was tripping out because this dog is always barking at me. Now you want to come sit next to me and lick me in the face. And so I called my mom, and I was smoking a cigarette right there, just looking around, not knowing what to do, confused, just, man. And my mom told me, I told her mom they're here to get me. She says, okay, call me when you get inside. And I says, I'm not going with them, Mom. And what broke me is because my mom, she's like, what do you mean you're not going with them? I said, no. I said, I'll see you upstairs, Mom. And it clicked into her mind, and she started crying. And she said, no, don't do this to me, please. And I said, she's like, I love you. I'll take care of you while you're in there. And I said, it's not about that, Mom. I don't want to go spend the rest of my life in prison. And she said, everything's going to be okay. And so she's like, do me a favor, please throw the gun. Little did I know, as I was talking to my mom, the front of the house had the fence. The cops were already breaching the fence, and I couldn't even see them. And so when my mom was telling me to throw the gun, I ended up throwing the gun for her because she was crying. And as soon as I threw that gun, within seconds, another armored vehicle came up, and they had a cop on top with the M16, and then they had a row of 3 cops with their shields, with their guns over it, and with their dog. And it's the timing. If they would have seen me with that gun, I'm pretty sure they would have lit me up. And so yeah, that's how I ended up getting caught right there. I surrendered right there. And that dog, like I told you, the dog licked me in the face. That they were going to release their dog on me, and the dog, that pit bull, ended up going and attacking their dog, and they ended up shooting that dog and killing that dog. And yeah, I got taken in for that right there, like that. And yeah, I feel like that dog saved me in a way. Like he didn't allow nothing to happen to me. Like he took my place. And that's just, man, I was really amazed by that. Okay, so when after I got arrested, I still wasn't done. I went inside the county jail, and I caused a riot in there. And after I caused the riot, I said, you know what, I'm done, man. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to live this life anymore. I said there has to be something better. And so I would just read these novels. I would read just storybooks. And so there was one day that this guy, he was a porter in the county, and real cool dude. I knew he was a Christian. And so he told me, he's all like, hey bro, I know you're fighting your case. I see the way you are. You're a real mellow guy. You stick to yourself. He's all like, I'm getting all these people coming in and out of my cell. He's all like, and I just want somebody that's going to be stable with me for a while. Do you want to move in? And so I'd seen his program, so I'm like, yeah. so I see him always just reading his Bible, real calm, real cool. And so,
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
what do you get from reading that Bible all the time? And he says, well, why don't you try it for yourself? And when I opened and I started reading the Bible came to life to me, and I realized all of my sins. And that's when I asked Jesus Christ to forgive me. And I accepted Jesus Christ into my heart and into my life. So even during that time, as I was going to trial, I still didn't know what to expect. Yeah, I was still scared, but there was an overwhelming sense of peace and joy within my heart that I felt. And I wasn't scared anymore. And so even though I went and I knew I got all that time, I knew that everything was going to be okay. And my mom, she went to every one of my court dates, and I would just try to encourage her, Mom, everything's going to be okay, like you said, you know. The Lord knows, the Lord's here. And that helped her. That helped her a lot. It affected her. It affected my kids because they don't have dad here with them, you know. But I'm grateful today because I'm still alive. I'm grateful today because I'm a better man today. Since that time I was lost out there. I was lost, like I said, with drugs. I was lost with alcohol. But more, it started when I was a kid, and I realized it was because I didn't have that love. I didn't know how to cope with the things that I was going through, those emotions that I was feeling during that time, right? And so now as a grown man, I'm going to a bunch of programs because I know I want change. I know I still have traumas that need to be dealt with. I know seeing things that I've seen living in the gang life and going through those things, getting jumped by those guys, and just living life not knowing if I was going to see the next day. I that's the way I lived. I didn't have no remorse at first. When I shot that guy, I didn't feel no remorse that day. But today, I can honestly say that I owe him, I owe his family, and I owe society a debt. And that debt is because I had no right doing what I did. There's no explanation for doing that. It's just out of the evil and hatred of my heart. And because of the hurt that I went through throughout that whole time, and that's why that happened.
You have 60 seconds remaining.
So today, if I'm able to, here at this prison, I try to help people, take them to groups, take them to church services, and just do whatever that I can to try to assist the next man.